sun is trying to kill me today, and we're kind of on a clock because I have to go to PT. I have to leave in like 30 minutes, but I've been trying to get this video done forever, and we're going to do it today. It's time to talk about soap and detergents and all of the laundry additives that we'd use when we are cleaning and maintaining cloth reusable products. And this is not limited to cloth menstrual pads. It is also cloth diapers, cloth paper towels, which, you know, we make, and they are a little different than a hand towel when they're made by people. And then cloth napkins, you know, basically anything you use that is cloth and reusable. One of the things we get universally across the board from people who are investigating or who see a video or who come across us online in a group or something and they're introduced to the concept, one of the first things they will say is, well, doesn't it defeat the environmental benefit to wash them in all of those harsh chemicals? And I'd never seen so many people concerned about the harsh chemical nature of soap and detergent. So it's time to talk about soap. We're going to talk about soap, we're going to talk about detergent, we're going to talk about borax, we're going to talk about oxygen cleaners, and I'm going to explain to you some things about how they're made, what's in them, and hopefully try to demonstrate to you with a little bit of scientific evidence and a little bit of my sarcastic, caustic wit. We're going to define the word caustic here in a minute. That you don't need to be concerned about detergent and soap. They are not chief amongst the environmental evils today. So let's talk about those. Let's start by talking just a second about why I think people have maybe made the mistake of thinking that soaps and detergents and laundry additives are these big environmental evils. A long time ago, and the first time I can remember, it was a Breyers ice cream commercial. And depending on what region of the country you're in, or if you're in another country, you may not be familiar with that. But it's a brand of ice cream in regions of the United States. And it's called Breyers. And they came out with this commercial at the beginning of all of this chemical aversion culture, is what I guess would be a good way to call it. And their commercial was comparing the label on another brand of ice cream to the label on their ice cream, which was like milk, sugar, peppermint, whatever. And so they were talking about, you know, ingredients you can pronounce, ingredients you can read, ingredients you know, that sort of thing. And that's the first one I remember. I mean, this was a good 20, 25 years ago. So this has been going on for a while, this concept that the word chemical means, or that if you see a long scientific name on an ingredient label, that means that it's bad, that it's not good for you, that it's unnatural. People hear the word chemical, and one of the first things they think of is toxin or unnatural or poison. They've done studies on that where they asked people word association with chemical. And chemical is not a bad word. Chemical is a scientific term, and basically what it means, it's to differentiate between, like, for example, in a solution, you put sugar in a glass of tea and you stir it until the sugar dissolves. That's a solution, because the sugar doesn't become the tea. The sugar just mixes in with the tea, okay? And when you have a chemical, that's when you mix two or more compounds or elements together and they change one another into something else. There are chemicals in everything. There are chemicals in our bodies, and there are chemicals in soap and detergent. And I think the place that people run into things is when they buy a green or a marketed green product. Those people will try to use the common names for things as opposed to the scientific names for things on labels. For example, they might put salt instead of sodium chloride on the label. Does that make sense? Because they know that the people who are looking at their product are kind of ingrained with that. If I can't pronounce or if I don't recognize the ingredients on the back, I have been trained to believe that those things are bad, unhealthy, unnatural, etc. And that's not necessarily the case. Salt is an excellent example of a chemical, sodium chloride, because if you take sodium, which is pretty unstable, and you mix it with chlorine, which is poisonous gas that will kill you, you put them together, you get table salt, which is harmless. Well, unless you have high blood pressure. So there are chemicals, including salt, sodium chloride, in just about every soap and laundry detergent that we use. So I'm going to move into the first question. We're going to talk about each of these things individually, and I'll try to keep this as, common language and short as possible, but I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a long video. And I will break it up into time markers so that you can watch it piece by piece, or just look at the part that's pertinent to you, that sort of thing. We'll try to make it convenient. There'll be time markers in the description on this video that you can click on and skip whatever part you're not interested in. Okay? So let's start with soap. The title of this video is Soap is Not a Harsh Chemical. So let's start with soap. What is soap? Soaps and detergents are surfactants. That's what they do. And a surfactant is something that changes, it lowers the surface tension on water. Surface tension is the physical integrity of water, like when you have a water droplet. The reason it doesn't fall apart, the reason it creates a little round ball that sits up off the surface of the table is because of surface tension. The reason why it hurts when you do a belly flop into the water instead of just immediately sinking down in painlessly is because of the surface tension on the water. And in order to grab onto the oil and the dirt and the stuff that's stains or dirt in your laundry, a soap or a detergent will break or lower that surface tension on the water so that it can do its job. Now, if you want to get down to an even more basic level, what a surfactant usually is a chain of hydrocarbon. It looks like a chain of molecules, basically. And one end of it is attracted to the water, and one end of it is attracted to the oil. And so what happens is the little soap chains will grab onto the dirt on one side, and then it will attach itself to the water on the other, so that when you rinse, the entire chain goes down, carrying the impurities with it. That's how soap works. So how do you make soap? Soap is created, and it's an entirely separate chemical reaction of its own called saponification. That's the name of the chemical reaction that makes soap. And soap is its own thing. You take an acid in the form of a fatty acid, which would be any kind of natural animal or vegetable fat. And those are all animal and plant fats, natural fats, are made up of triglycerides. That's a word you see thrown around a lot. All natural animal and plant fats are made up of triglycerides. And they are slightly acidic in nature. And so you take these natural fats and you mix, these natural fats, and you mix them with a strong alkali, which is where we originally got the term lye from. And when you mix those two things together, the saponification happens, and then you no longer have the acid and the alkali. You have soap. You have something entirely new because of the chemical reaction that has taken place. And so what you've done there is you've created a surfactant. You can't talk about soap without talking about lye, because if lye was not used to make it, it is not soap. It is a detergent. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is there are two different kinds of lye. One is potassium hydroxide, which is called potash or potash, depending on how you pronounce it and what part of the world you're in. And then the second one is sodium hydroxide, which is also referred to as caustic soda or soda ash. Both of these are highly biodegradable, but they are both caustic. And that's why they're dangerous to work with if you don't know what you're doing and you don't take proper safety precautions. Caustic means that it is corrosive, and lye, both types, will eat through an aluminum pan. It will also cause severe tissue damage if you get it splashed all over yourself and you don't neutralize it with an acid right away. Lye is not something, for example, that you want little kids working with. You have to use proper precautions. However, it is not an unnatural or the kind of thing everybody always goes on about, oh, it's an unnatural chemical. It's not unnatural at all. In fact, it's one of the most natural things there is. The way we discovered lye, and that lye soap is a thing, can be demonstrated with something really simple. So I'm going to tell you about how you can see a lye soap demonstration, a saponification demonstration, without actually having to sit and make soap. You can do it at a campfire. The oldest form of lye, potassium hydroxide, or potash or potash, that is made from hardwood ashes. So if you're sitting over a campfire and you've got a skillet that you've just made your breakfast in and it's dirty and you want to clean it, for centuries people have known that you can just scoop some of the white ashes up out of the fire, put them into your pan, add a little bit of water, and wait a second. Because the ashes contain potassium hydroxide, which is the lye. And if you let it sit for a second in a greasy pan with some water, those things will mix together. And you can swirl it around in the pan, and voila, the pan is clean. Because you've had the lye acid interaction in the pan with some water, and that's the most basic form of lye soap, I guess you can say, that you can make. And basically what you're doing is just a much more carefully controlled process when you make a bar of soap. There are a lot of soaps on the market that call themselves soap that are actually detergents. They're not actually soaps. Most of the facial cleansers, most of the moisturizing bars that you buy, and they even say soap on them because they're in bar form, they're not actually soap, they're detergent. Every single soap that you have, whether you see something about it being a lye soap or not, all soap is lye soap. And there is no lye left in the soap after it becomes soap. Did that make any sense? Some of you, even some of the soap makers, may be saying, but what about glycerin soap? Glycerin soap isn't lye soap. Yeah, it kind of is. Glycerin is a byproduct of the soap making process. And glycerin is a humectant, which means that it attracts water. So when you're using a glycerin soap, it'll attract the water to the skin. That's why glycerin soap can be, advertised as something that will soften the skin, or, it's a moisturizing kind of a product. And glycerin can be vegetable glycerin or animal glycerin, and glycerin comes from saponification. Glycerin is in the soap, and in a lot of soaps they remove the glycerin and then they put the glycerin into products that they sell you so that you can soften your skin after using the soap that dried your skin because they removed all the glycerin from it. Does that make sense? I read that in several places and I was like, that makes a whole lot of sense from a business standpoint, doesn't it? But glycerin is naturally present in soap because of the saponification process. Now, to get the transparent glycerin soap, they add sugar and alcohol and heat it for a longer period of time. So it's the same stuff, but they've added it so that they get new chemical reactions that end with a transparent, high glycerin content bar of soap. Does that make sense? So glycerin is produced by all soap making process. It can either stay in the bar, which is why a lot of the handmade soaps that still contain all of the natural glycerin that was produced tend to be more luxurious feeling soaps than some of the commercial soaps that have all the glycerin removed. Does that make sense? So we talked about lye, we talked about the alkali side. Now let's talk about the fats that we use to make soap. Now, the fats used in making soap are always natural fats, so meaning that they are of animal or vegetable origin. The two most common fats that are used in soap that's available on the market today are lard or tallow. Lard is pig fat and tallow is beef fat. Now, you'll also hear people refer to, venison or game meats from, like the deer family. Those things are referred to as tallow as well. And tallow is firmer and has a darker color and makes a firmer or harder bar of soap, whereas lard is softer and people like using it to make pristine white bars of soap. The vegetable fats that are used most frequently that I'm aware of are olive oil and coconut oil. But you can use all kinds of vegetable oils in your soap making process. So basically, if you're going to buy a soap, you can look on the back of the packaging, and there are keywords to look for so that you can determine which kind of fat was used to make your soap. Soap made with tallow, you're probably going to see an ingredient on the label, called sodium tallowate, or anything with the word tallowate in it, and that indicates that tallow was the fat, and again, that's beef fat. And if you're getting something from a homesteader, you can always ask the person who made the soap, and they will probably be able to tell you for sure whether, for example, it came from, some kind of a game animal. And if I'm not mistaken, sheep fat can also be used as tallow. If you get a homemade pristine white bar of soap that's very soft, that's probably a lard soap. But one thing that I'm not sure is I haven't found a chemical name for, you know, like sodium lardate. You know, I've never seen anything like that. So I don't really know what the chemical name, hard as I looked, I could not figure out what that was. And if I figure it out before I publish this video, I'll put it right here, the chemical name that you would find on an ingredient list that would indicate lard was the fat used in the saponification for that soap. There's sodium palmate for palm oil, sodium palm kernelate for palm kernel oil. There's cocoate, so sodium cocoate or cocoate would be on there for if it was a coconut oil, and then there's an olivate. I'm fairly certain it's olivate. If I'm wrong, I'll put it here for olive oil. So you can tell by looking, but they're all those, you know, scary looking long chemical names on the soap ingredient list for a commercial soap. Now, most handmade soaps, they'll tell you on the label that it was made with coconut oil or olive oil, or that they made it with tallow, that it's a tallow soap or a lard soap. But if you're just buying a commercial product, they're going to list the chemical names for all of the ingredients. It's still the same stuff. And there's very little about a bar of soap unless you want to get into dyes that they used to make the soap a particular color, or perfumes that maybe have phthalates in them that are not biodegradable. Those are the kinds of things you want to look at in your bar of soap, because the actual ingredients in the soap making process are pretty environmentally neutral and biodegradable. On the whole, soap is kind of a very low impact sort of product for people to use. Some of the things that are put into soap have these long names and people are confused, and soap making seems to be a foreign process that's far removed from most of us unless we happen to do it as a hobby and know what's involved. I've never done that. So, you know, the names can be intimidating, especially, like I said, in a chemical averse society where we have this idea that if it's a long name or if it's something we've never heard of, that it must be unnatural, poisonous, toxic, carcinogenic, or bad. And that is not the case. Soap is an extremely natural thing. It's been around for a very long time, and you really don't have to worry about an environmental impact with soaps. As you can probably tell from the sharp change of lighting and the bright light flashing in my face, highlighting all of my splotchy, I have no idea what's going on with my skin lately. I don't know, I'm getting far enough removed from my surgery that I don't know if I can still blame all of this on the surgical procedure, but we're just gonna ride along with it, okay? Because there's nothing I can do about it right now. Detergents. It's time to talk about detergents. I think we pretty much covered soap. So if there's anything else you want to know about soap, feel free to leave questions in the comments. If it's something that makes me curious too, I can look it up for you, or you know, you can just Google it. There's so much information out there. Pretty much any question you want to ask, the scientific community has written an article on it and published it online. So I strongly recommend that if you have any other questions about soap. Also, in most of the cloth communities, there are people who are artisanal soap makers, and they are usually very enthusiastic and passionate about their soaps, and they're also usually very eager to share what they know to anybody who's curious. So I strongly recommend that if you're interested in making soap on your own. So let's talk about detergent. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into what makes it different from soap. The problem with defining detergent is that there are so many different kinds of detergents. Basically, any surfactant, water-soluble cleaning agent that is not a soap is a detergent. And that can cover everything from dish soap, hand soap, facial cleanser, shampoo, floor cleaner, surface cleaner, glass cleaner, carpet cleaner, upholstery cleaner. You can every cleaning agent, and if you think about how many detergents there probably are in your home right now, detergents are a very large part of our chemical consumption in the developed world, and it's one of the things that we all use, and all of our soaps and detergents go down the drain and directly into the water systems. And so understanding what they're made of and what they are is pretty helpful. One of the most obvious things that separates a detergent from a soap is that detergents are made with either petrochemicals or oleochemicals, which are to the point of being synthetic, they are chemicals that are created from vegetable and animal fats. But detergents most commonly use petrochemicals or a mixture of petrochemicals, which means derived from petroleum, which is a fossil fuel, and oleochemicals, which are refined chemicals from the fats. And so that gets very, very complex. So what I'm going to do is focus on laundry detergents and laundry detergent additives, because those are the things that are going to address the concern expressed by quite a few people online that, that the environmental benefit of reusable cloth products is somehow mitigated because we have to wash them with harsh chemicals. And detergents are not necessarily harsh chemicals, and in fact the laundry detergents that we use and most of the household detergents that we use are in fact not harsh chemicals, and most of them have a very, very low or neutral environmental impact, kind of like soap. And I will get into that and what science has said about the environmental impact of detergents after we talk a little bit more about what's in detergent. In the World War period, between World War I and World War II, animal fats started to become a little less abundant. They were scarcer during that high mobilization of manufacturing period. And so the animal fats and vegetable fats were being used for other things, and so soap became problematic to make. And so in response to that, petroleum was much better understood by that point, and so they started to make detergents with petrochemicals, which were much more abundant during that period of time and much less expensive. That was the number one appeal at the time that these synthetic detergents were being made, was the cost factor, both for the consumer and for the manufacturer. And that's still true today, which is one of the reasons why so many of the soap products in your home aren't really soap, they are detergent. It's because they are less expensive to produce, and then the cost to the end user is less expensive as well. So the other thing that it wanted to address, and it was an excellent happenstance with detergents, is that detergents are better than soap in a lot of different areas because they don't leave a film, they don't leave a soap scum. And for people with hard water, which simply means water that is especially mineral rich, if it has a high mineral content, soap scum is an even bigger problem. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking all of a sudden. So, if you can imagine, washing your soap with lye hair, washing your hair with lye soap, which is what most people in the world did for a very, very long time. If you have hard water especially, you're going to have soap scum and calcium deposits and all kinds of stuff that builds up in your hair. And so even if you were squeaky clean, your hair might not necessarily look squeaky clean. And, there were films on surfaces and that sort of thing. So detergents turned out to be even better at cleaning a lot of things, like non-porous surfaces like glass, for example, and of course shampoos for the hair and that sort of thing. So detergents really took off because they are superior to soap in several applications for getting things clean. And so I think that's why you see such an abundance and such a diversity of detergent-based cleaners as opposed to soap-based cleaners, if that makes sense. There are a lot of myths surrounding some of the ingredients in laundry detergent, and so I'm going to try and clear those up. There are two classes of chemicals that appear in laundry detergent. One is sulfates and the other is phosphates that have caused some mass hysteria and a lot of misinformation. So I'm going to talk to you about those in particular. My father was a microbiologist who did toxicology research for the federal government here in the United States for his entire career. And, I remember distinctly having him have a conversation with me about a sulfate called sodium lauryl sulfate, which is also known as SLS. And it and one of its, in the same family, there's sodium laureth sulfate, which is known as SLES. They're different, but they do the same. They serve similar functions in detergents. So I'm going to talk to you about those because people have really freaked out to a level that is completely unwarranted about those two. However, there are some legitimate concerns about them as well. but they're pretty mild. If you Google SLS or SLES or their full chemical names, you're going to get a litany of articles. And a lot of them are going to have hysterical sounding titles like toxicity, and they're toxic, and they cause cancer, and all of this stuff. And if you take a closer look and you look at who the links are from, you'll see that they're not from scientific researchers. They're not from people who know what they're talking about. And quite a few of them are from green laundry detergent sellers who are trying to get you to buy their laundry detergent that doesn't contain these two sulfates. So let's talk about what the problems with sodium lauryl sulfate and sodium laureth sulfate are. They are known as skin irritants, meaning that in a laboratory environment, they have been shown on rats and humans to cause skin irritation. Now, that's interesting because SLS and SLES are abundantly present in everything from toothpaste, hand soap, shampoo, anything that lathers, and laundry detergent. Anything that lathers, they have foaming agents in them that make that pleasing shampoo foam that everybody likes in their shampoo products, and in your toothpaste it makes the bubbles. They are not carcinogenic. There is absolutely no evidence that has ever been done, and test after test after test has been done on both of these sulfate chemicals. They have both been tested exhaustively in the face of the hysteria. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that either causes cancer. There is absolutely no evidence that either one of them has any environmental impact that's problematic in aerobic and anaerobic situations, in the water and in the soil. Neither one of they both break down. They are both very biodegradable. They are both water-soluble surfactants. And when they go down the drain, by the time they get to the water channels, they are non-toxic to fish. There's all kinds of things, but you have to be, this was from the National Institute of Health, and after I talked to my dad about it. You can Google this sort of thing, but when you do that, you're going to find an entire raft of misinformation. And so when you look it up, make sure that you're looking at something from a .gov or a .edu, or somebody who actually has done research on it, as opposed to trying to sell you a green product, or trying to, a lifestyle blog or something of that nature. Read something that was written by a scientist, not a manufacturer of a product that they're trying to sell. I just don't think that this can be stressed enough. They don't cause cancer, and they don't harm the environment. Okay? There is another class of chemicals that is present in laundry detergents that does have a little bit of an environmental impact. And I say a little bit of an environmental impact because everything I've read on it says that it's, number one, the detergents are not the number one, they are a drop in the ocean. No pun intended, but they are like a water drop in the ocean compared to the other phosphate containing things that drain eventually into the water systems. So detergent is not the problem for the source of the phosphates. Phosphates are in laundry detergents because they help reduce the calcium buildup, the mineral buildup. The phosphates are the part of your dish detergent that makes your glasses sparkly clear. So without the phosphates in your detergents, you would still have mineral deposits. This is the part that makes detergent magically different from soap. It's the part that keeps mineral deposits and scummy film that can deposit on things after you've washed them from the cleaning product that you use to wash them with. Does that make sense? So phosphates, think of those as the clear and sparkly ingredient. And they exist in laundry detergents as well, and they keep buildups from happening. However, phosphates do have an environmental impact, and this phenomenon that it contributes to is called, let me look at it, because if I just try to remember, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Eutrophication? I'm putting it right down here. Not a scientist. Eutrophication? I think that's how you pronounce that. Basically what that means, okay, is that we're starting to develop this problem in our waterways. It's an overabundance of bacteria and algae. Now, these species are not in and of themselves problematic, except that when you have an overabundance of algae bloom, when you have an overabundance of certain kinds of bacteria that feed on the phosphorus and they feed on nitrogen. And the problem is that laundry detergents are putting some phosphates into the water. And so these bacteria multiply and these algae blooms multiply and they cut off oxygen supply because they breathe just like any other living organism. They breathe. And so they suck up all the oxygen, and we're having some serious consequences to aquatic life. However, I read some things from Science Daily that were summaries of 250 comprehensive studies done on detergents and soaps and their impact on aquatic life. And these were done all over the world and over a period of decades. So this is a very comprehensive look at detergents and soaps, and I'll put the link to that article that started me on that in the description. That's the article from Science Daily about eutrophication. You science people, if I'm mispronouncing that, please tell me so that I don't humiliate myself if I use that word in the future. But so that's the problem, is that the phosphates feed the bacteria and the algae, and so you get an imbalance in the ecosystem there, where we're killing off fish because we're sucking too much oxygen out of the water. However, that is more due to agri-chemicals, things from agriculture, mass industrial farming, dumps chemicals by the ton into the water systems, and it dwarfs the amount of detergent that goes into the water. However, phosphates in your detergent do contribute in their own small way, but you need to keep that also in perspective. You stopping using detergent isn't going to touch this particular environmental problem. However, because it exists on such a large scale with industrial farming, so it's the big numbers are not going to be reduced by you not using laundry detergent. However, if you would feel better knowing that you are not personally contributing to that, that makes complete sense to me, and that's something that everybody should know. However, it's not a harsh chemical. You're not harming anything by using. Does that make sense? I think the part of all of this that really struck me is just the ridiculousness that I need to make a video this in depth, but I've had a lot of fun learning all of this stuff because there are so many people who apparently, when faced with using cloth reusable menstrual pads, the argument they come up with is, well, you have to wash them in all those harsh chemicals, so you may as well just use disposable plastics. That still doesn't make sense to me, but we're doing this. So the sulfates, really, if you don't have a skin reaction to them, they are not a problem. I swear to you on everything science-y I have ever seen about it. They're just not a problem. The sulfates are not a problem. The phosphates do contribute to a problem, but the phosphates in the detergent are such a small portion of it that it's really, you can't make an impact by not using them in the detergent. However, all free and clear and natural and green phosphate and sulfate free detergents, there are so many out there to choose from, and as I was looking, there are these free and clear sulfate and phosphate free detergents available all over the world. So enjoy shopping for a new brand if that's something that you choose to do. There is one problematic ingredient that is still to this day in quite a few laundry detergents, even in some of the free and clear or biodegradable or green detergents, and that is because even though we are coming to find out that it is problematic, we didn't know that it was problematic until relatively recently, and science is still trying to work out how problematic it is. And that is an ingredient called EDTA. I am not even going to try to pronounce it. It'll be right here. As you can see, that one's a mouthful. But EDTA is something that was created to replace phosphates, because when they removed the phosphates from the laundry detergent, people were saying that the detergent didn't get their clothes clean anymore, because remember, the phosphates were there to keep the mineral deposits from the water and the film from soaps, detergents, without the stuff that keeps them from building up. there was this film and minerals from the water that were building up in the clothing and weren't getting removed every time. And people were like, my clothes aren't as soft, my clothes aren't clean. Well, that was because the phosphates weren't there. So what they've done is they found that EDTA could be used as a substitute for the phosphate and kind of accomplish the same sort of thing. And they kind of figured that it didn't contribute to the oxygen deprivation in the water systems and, through feeding the algae bloom. And so it turns out that EDTA might very well be a problem, but the science is still kind of out on that. EDTA is actually a food additive. We eat it. We eat it a lot, apparently, and I was unaware of that until I started reading about laundry detergent. So this one is something that I'm a little iffy on after reading about it. The biggest problem is that in the water it is not terribly biodegradable. They're finding that there are problems with its biodegradability, and though they're not really convinced that it is contributing to feeding the algae and the bacteria and causing that problem. They are concerned that it makes heavy metals in the water more soluble, so meaning that the plant life and the animal life in the waterways, they can more readily absorb heavy metals that would not otherwise be soluble if the EDTA is present. Now, this gets into chemistry and biology that I am not really qualified to comment on. I barely understood some of the things that I was reading from the studies that were conducted on this. And as recently as 2013, the verdict was still out, and I couldn't find anything more recent than that on the internet that I could understand or that had the entire article available. It was just an abstract. So EDTA is definitely an ingredient that you want to look out for, and apparently finding EDTA-free detergents can be difficult, even in the free and clear and green and, the biodegradable eco kinds of laundry detergents. So look into EDTA, read about it, but I was not convinced that the science is settled on EDTA yet, which is why I haven't really concentrated on it, if you know what I mean. Okay, so it is now working on 1:30 a.m., so I'm going to close out the detergent section. Now, I hope that illustrated for you kind of what's going on with detergent. Detergent is not, laundry detergent is not a harsh chemical. It's a combination of chemicals, and it does a better job of getting things clean than soap, especially in a hard water environment. The problematic ingredients in laundry detergents are largely no longer in the laundry detergents, and a lot of the other problematic ingredients in detergents have had their problematicness just really hyper emotionally and completely non-factually over-exaggerated. And I really just don't understand where that kind of stuff comes from when it gets so widespread. Laundry detergent problems would probably be, I would be more concerned about the dyes that they use to make the laundry detergent a certain color, which never made any sense to me. Why do you care if it's green or blue or whatever color they've decided to dye it? I would be more worried about the dyes and the perfumes having something in them that might have an adverse environmental effect just because of the sheer volume of it that goes down the drain. But again, everything I've read about laundry detergents, and especially the more comprehensive study that I mentioned before, and the description again is down below so that you can read that article. It's relatively short if you're interested. There's just no reason for people to freak out over laundry detergent. It's just not a problem. It is not on the list of anybody rational's priorities for environmental work. Soap and detergent are not causing the problems. They're not causing the problems in the water, they're not causing the problems in the soil, and they are not dangerous to people. The most, guilt-ridden thing I could find about laundry detergent was that there are sulfates and there are perfumes in the detergents that can cause skin irritation in large portions of the population. And that's very easy to remedy. And you probably, if you're a person who has those issues with your detergent, you probably already have switched to a laundry detergent that doesn't contain those things. But those are dangerous for the people using them, and dangerous is the wrong word. Those are annoying for the people who use those detergents. They don't really have an environmental impact. And I'll tell you what has an environmental impact. 17,000 petroleum-based plastic disposable products, plus the wrappers and applicators and boxes that they come in, being thrown away by every individual menstruating person on the planet in their menstruating lifetime. That's billions of plastic products made with petroleum products that are going into the landfill every single person on the planet, billions per year. And that's the part that I find environmentally unsound. That's the part that I find environmentally unsustainable. That's something that I think people need to be a little more concerned about. And the question that I have for those people is that if you really believe that soap and detergent are so harsh, do you not wash your clothes? Do you pound your clothes with a rock in the stream? I really do. I really want to understand where that response comes from, because everything I read, and I've spent hours and hours over the last several days reading about soap and detergent, and they're just not a problem. But this would not be a complete video if I didn't also talk about oxygen cleaners, the oxygen-powered stain treater / detergents / oxygen bleaches. Those products like OxyClean and like Vanish, those come in many different brand names, but they're all basically the same thing, and I'm going to talk to you about what those are. And I'm also going to talk to you about hydrogen peroxide in the 3% solution. And then what I'm going to close out with, because it's such a popular thing now to make your own laundry detergent. And the key ingredients in that are a bar of laundry soap, which we covered soap, and then you add borax. So we're going to talk about borax, and then you add washing soda. And so we're going to talk about washing soda, and that'll close it out. So anyway, I hope you found this part informative, and I'm going to go to bed, and then I will finish this video tomorrow morning, starting with oxygen cleaners. Okay, so I've had an extraordinarily productive day so far, so knock on wood, the oxygen cleaner section of this video is going to be easy today. We'll see. I've done PT already, and I've ridden my bicycle, and so this is just, I was just noticing my hair and debating whether to go downstairs and like do something about my appearance, but this is, if you run into me on the street, this is it. This is me, so I'm sorry. This is just what you get. Oxygen cleaners. Of all of the things that we use in the care and keeping of cloth menstrual pads, especially for stain treatment, you know, in the laundering process, oxygen cleaners are actually one of the most environmentally sound things that we use in all of it. Which is interesting, because those are the things that most people look at. Oh, you're putting oxygen bleach on your pads. Because that's a very common name for it. Oxygen bleach, an oxygen cleaner, or an oxygen-powered cleaner. Now, what that means when you're talking about an oxygen cleaner is that it has an oxidizer in it, meaning something that when it hits the water and is being used with the fabrics, it releases oxygen into the water. And the number one thing you want to think about is hydrogen peroxide, because that is the oxidizer in virtually all of these. Now, they're dry crystalline products most of the time, and that is because the hydrogen peroxide has been bonded with, or the dry ingredient has been treated with hydrogen peroxide, so that it's basically the same thing as using a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. That stuff you get in the brown bottle at the drugstore. It's a very common product in the United States. I'm learning, however, that people in other countries don't use it as widely as we do, which, we use it for a dental gargle, and it's in a lot of our toothpaste. And then, of course, there's oxygen cleaners. And then we use it for cleaning cuts and bruises and stuff like that, too. So as you can imagine, I did quite a bit of information surfing on the internet to look for things and, lists of ingredients and that sort of thing for what is in this particular brand, which in my country, in the United States, is the most common and well-known brand of an oxygen-powered cleaner. And OxiClean has lots of different formulations that they have out there. There's one with a yellow tab on it, and I bought that one once that was not this versatile stain remover free. I'm going to talk to you about this one because this is my favorite of the OxiClean products. The one with the yellow lid had some little blue crystals in it, and that was a surfactant that was added, so it was an extra kind of detergent, a powdered detergent that was added to the product with the yellow lid. And I looked at the material safety data sheet on that, and it's just a detergent. There was nothing particularly nefarious about that. But this one has exactly the same stuff in it that my BioClean product has, which is a vegan and particularly marketed to be environmentally friendly. I looked at the material safety data sheet on this particular product, this formulation, as well as the ingredient list, which was generously provided by the BioClean company. You won't find ingredient lists on a lot of these, I'm coming to find. But you can find them online, so in the form of material safety data sheets, and that's where they list the ingredients that are in the product. So I know that sounded like a lot of words and confusing, but basically I'm gonna break it down for you, and if you want to fact check me, you can do that. But again, I have to warn you, because the internet is full of blog articles and people condemning things, and I swear every time they were so factually inaccurate it made my eyes roll into the back of my head because I can't stand that stuff. One of the reasons I don't do a lot of these, even though I'm asked over and over again, oh, talk to us about this, talk to us about the environmental impact or the ingredients or the science or this. I'm a history major, okay? I'm a history major and housewife. I am not a scientist. I don't have a science background beyond what they made me take in college, okay? So one of the reasons I hesitate to do these things is because I've never felt qualified, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people on the internet from writing down a lot of garbage that's just flat not true. And so I read these articles because I was like, if there's something harmful, if there's something getting into the drinking water and killing off a bunch of fish or doing something that I need to know about, I want to know. And one of the articles I read in particular was on a blog where she was reviewing some laundry things, and she went off on OxiClean, and she was listing all of these problematic ingredients from OxiClean, and she was talking about these powdered bleaches. But the ingredient list she was using was from a gel stain stick and stain spray product. And I know this because when I went to the OxiClean website and I was looking at the material safety data sheets, I found the ones for the ingredients that she found problematic, and they are problematic ingredients, but they're not in this product. They're not in the product with the yellow lid either. They're only in the gel and liquid spray stain remover sticks and stain sprays, and as we've already talked about at length in the cloth community, using laundry soap and using products like this are more effective than all of those things anyway, so we don't typically use them. So take that, harsh ingredients on your cloth pads, people. If you're using spray and wash spray and spray and OxiClean gel sticks and stuff like that to treat your stains, maybe you ought to take a note out of our book, because our stuff isn't killing fish. And yours very well may be. So now I got that out of my system, let's talk about what is in these. Now, as I talked about, the main oxidizer, the big ingredient in most of these, I put it down on the floor. That's why I keep pointing at it. Oh my gosh. In the oxygen powder cleaner types like Vanish and OxiClean and that. Now, I didn't check the Vanish ingredient list. I tried, but I couldn't find it listed anywhere. I was familiar with the fact that American companies are federally required to publish the material safety data sheets on ingredients in their products. I don't know how that works in the UK, and because Vanish is manufactured in the UK, I didn't know how I didn't know what to Google. I didn't know what to look up since the Vanish people have not provided the list of their ingredients online. I couldn't find it easily, and I was really exhausted, but I can only assume that it's similar. There is some kind of a perfume in the Vanish powder because it smells, there's a scent to it. But that's not necessarily nefarious. I just don't know what it is. So I encourage you, if you're using, if you open your oxygen container and it doesn't smell relatively neutral, if it has a really strong scent and what that scent is not listed on the side of the package, you might want to go and investigate, look around and see what you can find. But I'm pretty confident that the ingredient lists for all of these things are really, really similar because the ones I looked at all had the same stuff. Okay, so the first thing is the hydrogen peroxide. But if you have an ingredient list or if you look it up, it's not going to say hydrogen peroxide because it's in dry form. So what you're going to see is either hydrogen peroxide and a product called sodium carbonate, which is not, that's sodium bicarbonate is baking soda. So this is a different kind of soda, okay? Sodium carbonate. And when the sodium carbonate is treated with hydrogen peroxide, it becomes sodium percarbonate. So if you see sodium percarbonate on the list, that is just the hydrogen peroxide treated sodium carbonate. Does that make sense? And both of them are environmentally neutral, naturally occurring products. They're not a problem. I had to take a Cadence puppy break. Hold on. Okay, so now that, what I just talked about, that's going to be the first ingredient. It will make up 50 to 75% of the bulk of what's in the container of your oxygen powder cleaner. And then one of the second ingredients is going to be something in the line of sodium sulfate, and this is what we call a bulker. This is something that they use just to add bulk. It's basically just the most common one, and the one that was actually listed on my BioClean product, is called sodium sulfate. And that is a chemical that actually has a really interesting story as to how mankind became aware of its existence. Way back when people were still using leeches to bleed and cutting their arms to bleed the ill humors out of their blood and that sort of thing, there was a scientist named Johann Glauber, and he accidentally discovered this mineral in spring water called sodium sulfate, and it's actually something that gets into the water, and the chemical reactions take place as the spring water passes through igneous rock formations. Okay, so it's a natural, not completely non-toxic and totally fine kind of thing that occurs naturally in the environment. But sodium sulfate, they discovered, was an excellent, when concentrated, natural laxative, which at the time was a medical breakthrough. And so sodium sulfate is referred to as Glauber's powder. I just thought that was fascinating. So anyway, sodium sulfate is present in most of these cleaners, and it does nothing for the product except bulk it up and make it easier for you to scoop it into your laundry. Okay, that's why it's present, and it's you just don't even need to worry about it. It's just there. Okay. And then in my BioClean, there was this product called sodium gluconate. And that is a chemical that is used in the place of, we talked about phosphates, and we talked about the EDTA that's in laundry detergents. They used to use phosphates, and now they've changed over to EDTA. In place of those things, which are chelating, and they soften the hard water so that the chemical and mineral deposits don't stick to the clothes or to the hair or whatever. That's what phosphates were used for, was to keep the sparkly clean things so that you didn't have mineral buildup. That's what sodium gluconate is used for in my BioClean version of the oxygen bleach. I didn't find any mention of anything like that. I didn't find any kind of a chelator or a water softener in the OxyClean product, and so the only thing I can think is maybe they're using something like salt that they don't need to disclose on a material safety data sheet, because there's got to be something in there, right? But that's what sodium gluconate is that it softens the water. So basically, the conclusion I came to is that if you are a person who is stain treating and then washing your cloth menstrual pads with an oxygen cleaner and a laundry soap bar, like, a Fels Naphtha bar or a Zote bar or just a regular soap of some kind, you are actually having zero environmental impact in your cleaning process whatsoever, unless you want to get really serious about the amount of water you're using. And, you know, that's a whole other conversation, because there are places in the world where you need to worry about water conservation, and there are places in the world where that's also a bit hysterical, because the water doesn't go away when it goes into the sewer. And so you have to wonder about, you have to consider factors like the abundance of water. You have to consider the effectiveness and the environmental aspects of your particular water treatment process in your municipality or county or country or what have you. And those things vary from place to place. And so, you know, aside from the fact that you're using water to clean your pads with, you're really having zero influence whatsoever on the environment. And again, I have to stress here before I move on to the other stuff, because this last part is going to be fun. We're going to talk about borax, we're going to talk about handmade laundry detergents, and that sort of thing, because those are, I'm excited to start doing that, just kind of for fun, to kind of compare and see, because if that stuff's as good as commercial laundry detergent, oh my gosh, we've got this in the bag, guys. But anyway, you have to balance and you have to evaluate, basically, where you think the stressors for the environment are. Do you think it's more stressful for the environment to wash your cloth pads with soap and an oxygen cleaner and a detergent? Or do you think it's worse for the environment to throw away a bunch of petrochemical-based plastic that are going to be there for 500 years, thousands of them over your lifetime, into the landfill? I picked this one. And if we still have the harsh chemicals that we're cleaning them with argument after this, it's no skin off my nose, because I've made a value judgment, and this is definitely what I chose. I didn't choose it for environmental reasons, but I liked the fact that it was a nice side benefit of getting rid of my dermatitis, was I was using a product that was also better for the planet that I'm living on. So that's where I am with that. And oxygen cleaners rock. Okay, guys, home stretch, finally. We're going to talk about what I think is the most fun part. I try to save the fun part for last. We're going to talk about homemade laundry detergents and the stuff that goes into them. And it's a very, very simple recipe. Almost every homemade laundry detergent I've read anything about contains 3 ingredients, and then sometimes people add essential oils for scent. The first ingredient is borax. The second ingredient is washing soda. And then the third ingredient is a bar of soap. We covered soap, I think. So let's talk about borax and washing soda, which we've also already talked about. Okay, the first ingredient I want to talk to you about as it regards homemade laundry detergent is borax. Borax is a naturally occurring mineral that is mined directly from the earth called sodium tetraborate. Okay, now people who don't want to use borax or find problems with borax, they fall into 2 categories. There are 2 different problems they have, and I'm going to talk about the first one first, because we need to get that out of the way. The first problem people have with borax is because they mistakenly believe that it is the same thing as boric acid. Not the same thing. I'm going to say it again. Borax and boric acid, not the same thing. Now, boric acid is sometimes found near or in amongst borax deposits in the earth. That's true. However, the borax product that you buy off the shelf is not boric acid. They're not the same thing, okay? Now, this is the level that I've been dealing with every single one of these chemicals that I've talked to you about, where I've been frustrated that there's misinformation. This is the kind of thing we're dealing with, and I can't even with some of this stuff. But here's the deal. Even on some of the more reputable environmental websites out there, you know, people that we know, you know, names that you would trust for giving you good advice about environmentalism. If you Google, is borax bad for the planet? You'll get, you know, a litany of articles, and you start reading them. Now, some of them just straight go off on the boric acid thing. They'll have 2 or 3 paragraphs about how detrimental boric acid is for people and for the environment, not even acknowledging that it's not the same thing as sodium tetraborate. Okay, Those you can just dismiss. The ones that really get my goat are the ones where the article will start with, now, borax is not the same thing as boric acid, but boric acid is terrible, and this is why you shouldn't use borax, even though they just said that boric acid and borax are not the same thing. Here are the two separate chemical formulations for borax and boric acid. Got it? Good. The second problem people have with borax is a little more complex because I can't even really articulate it for you. Here's the thing. If you Google, is borax poisonous, or is borax dangerous, or is borax safe, or is borax any combination of those things, you're going to get page after page after page after page of people who are talking about if you eat a teaspoon of it, you're going to die, which is patently untrue. People have been taking it as a supplement and still take it as a supplement for the boron, which is in borax. It contains boron, and boron is an element that's actually it's vital for human life and animals and plants and all kinds of things. So that's what people have always, for centuries, people have taken it in small doses, sometimes at the recommendation of a doctor, and more recently just out of habit or as an old homeopathic remedy, that sort of thing. However, you're going to get all of these things. Oh my gosh, if your children breathe it in, they're going to die, and it's poisonous. And this all has to do with some recent things that came out. In 2010, some European health organization put it on a list of things of concern. Basically, they've started to note that rats who were exposed to huge amounts of it had some toxicity with skin and lung irritation. Not cancer. It's completely non-carcinogenic. It is about half as toxic as salt in all of these different ways. The incidence, I mean, if you look at the toxicity reports on some things. So it has a very low toxicity level. It is non-carcinogenic. However, it has come under scrutiny lately by the scientific community. And I read so much stuff and I couldn't find anything reputable. There is some concern of reproductive toxicity, especially in males. And there is some concern about its potential for respiratory irritation and skin irritation. However, it must be stressed that all of those things are after huge exposure, huge and sustained exposure beyond, taking a teaspoon of it as a supplement or using it in your laundry detergent. I'm going to leave it up to you because, frankly, I got exhausted and I have a very low stupidity threshold, and I read one too many really, really stupid articles on it, and I couldn't find the reputable studies in the window of time that I've used to make this video. I'm sure if I made it my mission, I could go and I could find more on it. But those are the concerns that have been raised. All of those concerns have been raised only in the last few years, which I'm wondering about because we've used borax for centuries. And then, on the other side of it, there's all these people who are saying there's nothing wrong with borax at all, and this is a conspiracy theory by the pharmaceutical companies. So this is the level of intellect we're dealing with on almost everything that I find when I Google borax. So that's all of that together is under the second problem that some people have with borax, is that they believe that it's this horrible toxic thing that will make you and all of your children drop dead if you touch it. And that's not true. So the concerns that are there, they're the product of scientific studies that have been done over the last 5-6 years. I can't find anything substantive on it. So I'm going to ignore it until I read something a little more substantive on that. Frankly, I just don't believe there's anything wrong with borax. Now, a couple of people that I read articles about, most of them would acknowledge that borax mining is not really detrimental on the level. People hear the word pit mine and they think, oh my gosh, they're destroying the planet. However, sodium tetraborate mining is kind of it's a different class of pit mining. Arguably the most popular and widely available brand of borax, and indeed it's the only one I've actually ever seen in stores in the United States of borax, is the 20 Mule Team brand of borax. Okay, so this is the logo and packaging that you see on 20 Mule Team. And the 20 Mule Team mine in California is actually, I mean, if you read up on it, it's fantastic. They have one of the greenest mining operations in the world. Borax is one of those things that's actually used. They've actually started to use borax to make other kinds of mining less toxic to the environment. So borax mining, unless you're one of those people who just looks at the word mine and has an emotional breakdown, if you look at it, logically, in order to remove minerals from the earth, they must be mined. And as far as mining goes, borax is the most environmentally friendly kind of mining that goes on. And if you go to the 20 Mule Team, and don't even go to their website because that's always suspect. Go read about the 20 Mule Team borax mine in California from someone else. Read what someone else objectively said about their mining operation, and it's actually really kind of inspiring to see a company that is making such an effort to do it in a green way. But once you read about borax mining, you realize that yes, even though they are digging big pits in the earth to get it out, they do that with salt. They do that with coal, which a lot of people don't like, but that's where your electricity comes from, that and water. So unless you are a person who has eliminated every other type of mined product, everything else that you get by mining it out of the earth, eliminate all of those before you eliminate borax. Does that make sense? So yes, borax is naturally occurring. It is mined out of the earth. And so look into that, understand it. I was kind of inspired by how they've managed to make, a natural resource. They've been able to get it out of the ground in such a way that it is minimally invasive to the environment, if that makes sense. I thought it was fantastic. Before we move off of borax completely, I wanted to just stop and tell you the good things about borax, because I think that with the way the Google results were going, that you got to get to like page 4 or 5 before you start seeing the articles about all of the good things that borax is used for. Borax has long been known as an anti-inflammatory, and so it has been part of arthritis treatment for a really long time, and it is still recommended for use in the treatment of arthritis. Boron is a big deal in arthritis treatment. People have always used borax to brush their teeth. It's good for swollen gums. It's good for strengthening tooth enamel. It has been used to fight osteoporosis. In fact, boron is a big deal with osteoporosis medications. And people have taken borax orally for over 100 years for all of these things. And people still use it for those things. The things around the house, I'm not going to recommend that you take it or eat it or drink it or any of that, but because, like I said, it has come under scrutiny. They're reviewing all of those things and, weighing the benefits against the other stuff. And so unless you're a doctor or a scientist, don't make that kind of a decision for yourself. But those are the things that borax has traditionally been used for. The things around the house that people use it for, and those are the things that we still use it for, and which I'm going to heartily recommend that you use it for, is that, it's a good insect repellent. People have long known that if you don't want to spread poison around, or you don't want to kill the grass, or you don't want to harm anything, but you do want to keep the ants out, you put borax around the perimeter. Borax is good in the garden for getting rid of aphids. It's good for keeping bugs off your plants without killing your plants. Borax is also, of course, a great laundry booster. And that's what I intend to use it for. And that is why it's one of the main ingredients in homemade laundry detergent. And it has no environmental impact. Okay, last piece, guys. Soda ash, also known as washing soda, also known as caustic soda, also known as sodium carbonate. Soda ash is the common term for it. And from everything I read, the most common use of soda ash is in glass making. It's used for that far more often than anything else. However, it is also used to make laundry detergent. And sodium carbonate, where it's a naturally occurring thing, and what happens is sodium that is naturally produced in waterways and such, as it trickles through rocks and things of that nature, sodium, it comes into contact with carbon dioxide. And so the sodium carbonate is, or the soda ash, is a precipitant or precipitant? Anyway, it's something that happens when sodium comes into contact with carbon dioxide, and then it precipitates from that chemical reaction as sodium carbonate. And so it's naturally occurring, like a lot of the things that we've talked about, which I found really encouraging. I mean, of all the things we use that are just, you know, synthetic chemical slurries from petrochemicals, you know, which we all worry about whether it's being dangerous or harsh, being beside the point, being that it's made from fossil fuels and all of these synthetic things. It's nice when you come across a series of products and a series of ingredients. That was my phone, of something as common as detergent and soap that we use all the time, and then we find out that the majority of the stuff in it is naturally occurring and safe. That makes me happy. Anyway, so washing soda is used simply as a water softener, and that is its application in laundry detergent. There it goes again. Oh my goodness. I'm receiving texts. Hold on. My goodness, texts and the garage door opening and closing. I'm surprised we didn't have jets overhead. Okay, so we use washing soda as a laundry additive for softening the water. So when you make homemade laundry detergent, mostly what people put in it is borax and the washing soda, and then they put in either in grated form or liquid form, depending on whether they want a liquid soap or whether they want a powdered detergent soap. They'll take a bar of laundry soap and grate it up in there, and so voila, that's your homemade laundry detergent. And there are many recipes online. I have not made it yet, so there will not be a link below to my favorite recipe because I don't have one yet. If I do develop a favorite recipe, I'll let you know. Some of the things beyond those three main ingredients that people tend to put in homemade laundry detergent are things like essential oils or scent crystals. Now, the scent crystals I find a little suspect environmentally speaking. I would have to look at each product individually and find out what's in them. But from my understanding, most homemade laundry detergents, even if you add scents to them, don't really necessarily scent the laundry. They're very gentle and unscented kinds of things when they come out that way. So I'm going to give it a try and we'll see. But those are the ingredients, and that was my hour-plus long investigation of soap and detergent and borax and washing soda, and I hope you found it informational. I had a tremendous amount of fun researching all of this stuff, but it has been really almost a week since I started investigating this, and so I'm really glad to just be getting the video done. And all of this started because every time I watched a video about somebody's cleaning routine or what have you for their cloth menstrual pads, people would say, well, you know, you're washing them in all those harsh chemicals, so you're not doing anything for the environment. When in truth, that's just simply not the case. We're not washing them in harsh chemicals at all. And again, as I've said before in the video, you know, you have to weigh back and forth what you value more. What do you think is more detrimental or more beneficial? And make your decision from there. Just in closing, I wanted to just, you know, say a couple quick things. I promise this last part's quick. Number one is, you know, when you look into things like this, go into it looking for information, not confirmation of an idea that you already have. And that's the important thing. I think a lot of us, because of the chemical averse culture I've mentioned several times, we are predisposed to be like, I knew it. I knew that had to be poisonous, or I knew that had to be dangerous, or I knew that had to be bad for the environment. When really, it's very easy to find an echo chamber like that. It's very easy to take the other one too. You will be able to find blogs and videos and things that will confirm what you wanted to hear, or what you thought you were going to hear. And that was my biggest frustration in all of this, is I tried to take it kind of from an academic standpoint. It's like, okay, if I was researching this for a paper, who would I want to listen to? Whose opinions and reports would I want to read? And that's really what I tried to do. That's what I tried to stick with and keep to while I was reading things for this video. All of that said, I am not a scientist. Again, I don't have a science background. I mean, I took basic chemistry. I took basic biology. It was an honors class in high school. But you know, I took geology in college. There you go. So don't take anything I said in this entire long video as gospel necessarily. Fact check me if something I said didn't resonate with you, or if something that I said sounded wrong, or if something that I said was completely counter to what you've heard or read or experienced. Get online and fact check me. Because that's how you have useful conversations about these things. That's how you get useful information, and that's how you take something that people are wrong about and correct the ship, so to speak. You know what I mean? But from everything I found, soap and detergent and the things we use to wash cloth pads with, the things that we use to make homemade laundry detergents, they simply are not anywhere near the top of the list of environmental dangers. They are not the concerns. They are not causing the huge problems that we're having in our waterways or in our soil. They're not toxic to people on the whole. You know, there have been a couple of exceptions that we've mentioned in there, and a couple of things that are kind of iffy. And so those are things that you might want to investigate for yourself and make your choices based on what you think about those things, not what you feel about those things, what you think about those things, and what you know about those things, and make your decisions based on that. But I am still completely and utterly convinced that soap is not a harsh chemical, and that using pretty much reusable anything is preferable to using disposable anything. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it informational. I certainly did. And leave any comments down below. There will be a series of links of things that I ran across while I was doing this video that I found interesting and that I wanted to share. Just a variety of articles and things like that. And they will all be in the description. And I will see you again soon. It won't be another hour-long video next time.